flags. You understand how connections get established on the internet, how connections are ended on the internet, and you understand the importance of port scanning as well. Let us now actually one by one understand and learn a variety of different port scanning techniques. So for each technique, I will explain the theory to you, and then I will explain the command that you got to type, the Nmap command, and then I'll give you a live demonstration as well. So the first type of port scanning technique that I want to discuss with you is something known as the TCP Connect port scan. The TCP Connect port scan. It's one of the most accurate port scanning techniques available. It is very reliable, but at the same time it's easily detected. And there is no solution or countermeasure. In other words, there is no way to stop a criminal from performing TCP Connect port scan on your server at all. I mean, there's nothing that you can do to stop that from happening. So if you are a criminal, how can you perform TCP Connect port scan? So the command that you got to type, I'm just going to reduce the font size a little bit so it fits into one line. Alright, so the name of the first port scan is TCP Connect port scan, and the command that you got to type is Nmap -ST. So basically S means scan and capital T means the TCP Connect port scan has to be used. So there are a variety of different port scanning techniques available, and to specify which port scanning technique you want to use, you just keep changing this letter. So in the first example, the letter is capital T, but then you can change it to something else as well. Then you have -P. -P means range of ports, and the range of ports that you want to scan is 1 to 100. 1 to 100, followed by the victim IP address or host name. So I'll repeat, the command is Nmap -ST, so Nmap space -ST space -P space 1-100 space ankitfare.in. So at the end you specify the victim, then you use the -P to specify the range of ports that you want to scan. Now usually a website can have 65535 ports, if I'm not mistaken, from 1 to so many ports. But then to port scan all the 65,000 ports, it can take half an hour or so. So that's why right now for just the lecture purpose, I'm just going to port scan 1 to 100 ports. But in reality, when you're trying to hack into a server or a website, you will need to port scan all the ports that exist on their on the server. So let me go ahead and copy paste this command into Nmap. So just give me a minute while I quickly open up Nmap. I'll prefer to use a slightly older version of Nmap, only because somehow I've always gotten better results with the older version as compared to the latest version of Nmap. And if you want to download the older version of Nmap, just go to the Nmap website and you can actually choose any version that you wish to download. So let me copy paste this command. Let's port scan ports 1 to 100 on ankitfare.in, and let us see what kind of results we get. So let's wait for a few minutes. We just have to be patient. Typically port scanning can take anywhere between 1 minute to 5 minutes or so. So if all of you look at the screen, let me copy paste the result. We have successfully managed to finish the port scan, and this is the output that we got. So it says that it tried to port scan ankitfare.in, and the output is that because we are port scanning only port 1 to 100, within that range there are 3 ports that are open. So on ankitfare.in you had port 21, port 25 and port 80 that are open. So port 80, like I had mentioned earlier, is the HTTP port, which means that, of course, ankitfare.in is a website, so port 80 has to be open. Then port 25 is also open, which is the SMTP port, which basically means the outgoing email port. And then you have the FTP port open, which is port 21. So there are 3 ports that are open on ankitfare.in, and each port has a particular service that it offers, which has been listed on the screen, and each port will have a particular software running as well. And later on, maybe in today's lecture, we will learn how to find out the name of the software running on an open port as well. And each of the open ports is a potential entry point into ankitfare.in or whichever website you are port scanning. So that is the TCP Connect port scan. The theory behind it is essentially in the TCP port scan or TCP Connect port scan, what happens is the port scanning software will one by one try to establish a 3-way TCP/IP handshake with each and every port on the remote computer. And whichever port is open, in step 2 you'll receive a SYN-ACK packet back from it. If the port is closed, then you get a reset acknowledgement packet. Reset why? Because there was an error. Why? Because the criminal was trying to establish a connection with a closed port. Hence there's an error message that is generated. The reset data packet is sent back to the criminal along with the ACK packet. So based on the difference in response in step number 2, you can figure out whether the remote port is open or closed. So that is what the TCP Connect port scan is all about. The next type of port scan is the TCP SYN scan. TCP SYN port scan. So let's discuss the command and then let's see a demo. TCP SYN port scan. Now the good news about Nmap is that you don't need to keep remembering hundreds of commands. Once you know how to write the syntax, the only thing that changes when you move from one port scanning technique to another is essentially just one letter. So if it's a TCP Connect port scan that you're trying to run, then you basically need to type capital T. If it's a TCP SYN port scan that you're trying to do, then instead of capital T, you type capital S. As simple as that. So that's the only difference between the two port scanning techniques. So let me now give you a demonstration of the TCP SYN port scan. So again, we'll have to wait for a few minutes. So if all of you look at the screen, we have gotten a particular response, and in this case, it is showing that 4 ports are open. So I would say that whenever you're port scanning a remote computer, maybe do 3-4 different types of port scanning techniques and see the results. The next port scanning technique, actually before that, I just wanted to inform all of you that the TCP SYN port scan is actually often known as the half open scan because it never establishes a full 3-way TCP/IP handshake with the remote computer. And since the full three-way TCP/IP handshake is never established with the remote computer will not know your identity. So this particular port scanning technique is often known as the stealth scan or the half-open scan, where essentially your identity is not revealed to the victim, and a lot of criminals prefer this particular technique in terms of port scanning. The next port scan is the SYN-ACK port scan, which unfortunately Nmap no longer supports. So I'm not going to discuss this in this course anymore. I used to discuss this, but Nmap no longer supports this completely. The next port scanning technique is the finished port scan. So in the finished port scan, what happens is, let's see the command first. The command is pretty much the same. The only thing that will change in the command is, instead of capital S, it becomes capital F for finished port scan or fin port scan. As simple as that. So let us now execute it in Nmap and see the results. So here what happened is, let me just copy paste the results and we can discuss them. It says that, okay, host is up, which is nothing new, and it says that all 100 ports on ankitfire.in are open or filtered. So fin port scan is not the most reliable port scan. So I would say that the best is TCP Connect port scan. TCP SYN port scan is also good, but this fin port scan and all that is not that great, but you can still try your luck with it. Another port scan is a null port scan or an Xmas tree port scan. A null port scan basically makes use of a null packet. A null packet is basically a packet where none of the flags have been enabled. So all the flags are disabled. So SYN flag is disabled, PSH is disabled, reset is disabled, ACK is disabled. Think about, or even fin is disabled. So think of any kind of flag, all the flags are disabled in the null port scan or a null packet. The Xmas tree packet is exactly the opposite. Xmas tree is a Christmas tree packet where essentially all the flags are switched on. So imagine you are a machine, you receive a null packet. Null packet means no flags are on. And if you receive a packet with no flags on, you will not know what you are supposed to do with the packet. Because the flag defines the functionality of the packet. But if there are no flags at all, then there is no functionality to the packet. So the recipient, the system that receives the flag or receives the null packet, has no clue what to do with it. Similarly, if you receive a Christmas tree packet or an Xmas packet, all the flags are switched on. As a result, you get confused whether you need to start a new connection, end a connection, reset a connection, or acknowledge a connection. So again, an Xmas tree packet has no use because the recipient or the system that receives it will not know what to do with it. So in Xmas tree and null port scanning, we are making use of null packets or Christmas tree packets that have no use. If a particular port to which a null or Xmas tree packet is sent is open, then there will be no response. It will be dropped because there's no purpose of this packet, so it is dropped. If the port is closed, then what will happen is the victim will generate a reset packet. Because the victim will see that, oh, there's an error, because why are you sending data to a closed port? So since you're sending data to a closed port, I'm going to reset your connection. So depending on the difference in response that you get, you can determine whether the remote port is open or whether it is closed. So Xmas tree scan and null scan. The commands, I think all of you can predict the commands by now. In Xmas tree you type X, and in null scan You type N. So let's try this out in Nmap. I'll do a null scan on ankitfare.in ports 1 to 100. It says that you cannot use fast or port selection when not doing a port scan. Okay. Let's try an Xmas tree. Let's see if we are able to do an Xmas tree scan. Again, it does not really give us a good response. See, what happens is that it's very easy to just filter out null scan, Xmas scan, and SYN scan. So the most reliable are the first two port scanning techniques that I shared with all of you, the TCP Connect scan and the half open scan. The next type of port scanning technique is actually quite interesting. It's called the blind port scanning technique. It is a type of port scanning that allows you to port scan the victim without sending a single packet to the victim from your own IP address. Every system has something known as the fragment ID number, which is a 4-digit number that is increased by 1 each time a packet is sent by that system. Okay, I'll repeat. Every computer has something known as a fragment ID number, which is basically a 4-digit number that is increased by 1 each time a packet is sent by that particular computer. So in blind port scanning, what you're trying to do is, or in idle port scanning, what you're trying to do is, you're trying to find out which ports are open on the victim's computer without having to send any packet from your system to the victim's computer. So to do this, step number 1 is that you probe a zombie machine for their fragment ID. Zombie is a third-party machine, maybe your friend's machine, you can call zombie. So you find out the fragment ID of your friend's computer. And how do you do that? You basically send a SYN-ACK packet to the zombie machine. The zombie will send back a reset packet to you saying that we don't have a connection, so why are you sending me a SYN-ACK packet? So once you get the reply from the zombie, that is the reset packet from the zombie machine, you record the fragment ID number, which let's assume it is 1012. Step number 2 is that you send a spoofed SYN packet from the zombie machine to the victim. If the port to which you send that SYN packet is open, what will happen is the victim will send back a SYN-ACK packet as per the 3-way TCP/IP handshake rules. And the reply will go to the zombie because you had sent a SYN packet from a spoofed IP, which is the zombie's IP. So zombie sends back a reset and increases its fragment ID by 1. And now it becomes 1013. If the port is closed, victim sends a reset to zombie. Zombie simply discards the reset and does not change its fragment ID. So if the port is open, the fragment ID would have changed by 1. If the port is closed, the fragment ID would not have changed. Step number 3, you probe the fragment ID of the zombie again. If the fragment ID has increased by 1, the port number on the victim's machine that you had probed is open. Otherwise, it is closed. And the Nmap command that you got to type to perform blind port scanning or idle port scan is the following. I'll just type it in the notepad file so all of you can copy it. So idle or blind scan. Again, nothing really changes except instead of it becomes SI instead of SN. And typically you can specify a range of ports as well if you want. And then you enter the zombie IP. And then you enter the victim's IP or victim hostname. As simple as that. So that is how you can basically perform a blind scan or an idle port scan. Another type of port scan which I like to discuss with all of you is the ACK port scan, which is often also known to be used to detect the presence of a firewall. It is a type of port scan that can be used to determine the presence of a firewall or filtering mechanism on the victim's machine. What happens in this port scan is that the attacker sends an ACK packet to each and every port on the victim's computer one by one. If there is a firewall present, there is no response. If there is no firewall present, the victim will send back a reset packet. So depending on the difference in response, you can determine whether the respective port numbers on the victim's computer are open or whether they are closed. And the command that you got to use for an ACK port scan is pretty much the same. Just change it to SA for ACK port scan. SA. So we have seen a variety of different ways or commands that you can use to perform port scanning using Nmap. Let me now introduce to all of you a brand new or a different app or different software known as ScanLine. ScanLine is basically a port scanning tool that allows you to perform port scanning just the way Nmap does. And ScanLine is available as a free download on the internet. And the way you got to use it is the following. ScanLine runs from the MS-DOS prompt. And let me quickly give a demonstration of ScanLine to all of you. So I'll just copy the command so that all of you can write it down as well. So the command that you got to type is SL space -V. V normally means verbose, which means that more information is given or detailed information is given in the output. -T is used to specify the range of ports. So in this case, the range of ports is 1 to 100, followed by the victim's IP address or host name. So in this case, the victim is ankitfadia.in. So let me copy the command and let me open up ScanLine on my computer, and I'm going to paste this command and I press enter. So let's wait for the output. So if you notice, it's saying that pinging one IP found 0 live systems. So on ankitfadia.in, since I have a firewall installed which does not respond to ping packets, it is not able to detect or perform port scanning. So let me try another website, imt.edu. So now if you notice, it's saying scanner 1 IP started, pinging 1 IP, found 1 live system, and it has found 4 open ports between 1 to 100. So you have port 21, port 25, port 53, and port 80 that are open on imt.edu. As simple as that. So ScanLine is extremely easy to use. It's another great port scanner. It's very fast and it does a great job. So you have Nmap, you have ScanLine. Another one software which I like to share with all of you is HPing. HPing 3. HPing 3 is also a port scanning software. It allows you to perform a variety of different types of port scanning methods. And I'll actually give all of you a couple of minutes to write down all these commands that have been displayed on the screen. Or actually just write down the argument. That is -F, -X, -P, -U, -A, and -2 or -8. So either you can specify a particular port number, like port 80 for example, or you can specify a range of ports as well, like 0 to 100. So depending upon what you wish to do, you can accordingly type the commands. I'll give you one more minute before proceeding